Everybody come in. Welcome. Nobody. Oh no.
So, like I said, I may have an issue. I'm on my phone using
Okay.
the Excel Mirrorbook, and it may like warm up, and so disable the app.
Well,
I'm
Let's hope
monitoring.
it goes well. Okay, we're
fingers
live and we have
crossed.
people joining in. Everybody, welcome. Thank you for joining.
Welcome everybody. We'll give you a few minutes to join in the meantime, those of you who are already here, you may want to check out our chat option where you can say hello, shout out where you're from, what you're doing here. If you're from Korea, what are you doing in Korea? How was your day? So we're looking forward to hearing from all of you.
Maybe Marta, you can start by introducing Seoul Startups.
I will slowly. So first of all, hello everyone. How are you doing? How is today for you? My name is Martha, and I am one of the hustlers behind Seoul Startups. Seoul Startups is one of the biggest international global startup communities here in Korea. We have almost 1,600 members at the moment. I actually checked this morning. We're all very close to 1,600 at the moment. So good for us. We are community startup people for startup people. We're creating a space where anyone can share, create, co-work, find a person to do business with, find a person to do a cool project with. It's an open source community for everyone, for anyone that's interested in the Korean startup scene. Let me share my screen while we still wait for everybody to join, so you can have a better idea of what we're doing. Ooh. Oh no, I don't want to share. Sorry, my computer's a bit glitchy these days. Go away and present yourself. Oh. So can you see my screen? Well, it's pretty much the same as my background right now, but can you see it?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Yes.
Well, welcome to Seoul Startups. The truth behind Seoul Startups is that in order to go to a global level, to be an international startup, you need to start with your local community, your local tribe that will be there for you and that will cheer you on. And that's what we're creating just for you. We have been like I said, I have to update this one. We have been going on since 2017, so 3 years. Started off as an idea on a napkin where a few expats and Koreans that were working on the Korean startup scene met together in a bar to complain about how there's lack of networking events, lack of people to talk to, lack of network to reach out to, and a community where startuppers and people related to the startup scene could actually do something together. And to kind of address this, we created first a Slack channel, which I believe most of you are members of. If not, go to soulstartups.com and join that page. And then slowly it progressed into something bigger. We started running offline events. We started cooperating with various recognizable entities here in Korea, here in Seoul. And it's not stopping. It's going bigger, bigger, and bigger every single day. This year, obviously, we have to limit ourselves to online events, but actually it's opened so many possibilities because we've been able to connect and invite speakers and panelists, not only from Korea, but from all over the world. And I think that's an amazing opportunity that we should take advantage of in these interesting times. These are our amazing community leaders. They are all on the Slack channel. So if you have any questions, you need to talk to someone, reach out to them. They're your tribe too, and therefore there for you as well. And like I said, if you haven't been to our website, go there. Mire, one of our community leaders, who I hope is there right now, we'll leave a link to it. So see you at the Slack channel. without further ado, I will pass the virtual mic to Albert, our amazing community leader #1, who's awesome and who's going to be also our facilitator for today. Albert is going to introduce our equally amazing and awesome panelists. So stay tuned. If you have any questions, like I mentioned, you can use the chat, or down here in your menu bar, you have a Q&A option where you can leave your questions as well. And depending on how the discussion flows, we will either ask those questions during the panel discussion or afterwards during the Q&A session. So feel free to shoot. But without further ado, Albert, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Marta. What a nice introduction. Good evening, everyone. I hope you had a nice dinner. It's already 7, and let's have fun time today together. My name is Albert. I work at one of the startup accelerators here in Korea. I also volunteer here at Seoul Startups. And today I'll be talking with our amazing panelists and also getting some questions from you, audience, and forwarding them to our speakers. So today we have 2 amazing speakers, Somang and Yanis. Both are members of Seoul Startup community and entrepreneurs here, international entrepreneurs here in Korea. So why don't we start by self-introduction as well? So Somang, could you please go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey, hi everyone, I'm Somang. I'm actually a returning Korean. I was born here, but I spent most of my life overseas. I did come back here for university, and I worked originally as a journalist, and I covered the budding startup scene back in 2010 as the business correspondent for Reuters to Korea. And I left subsequently and worked in consulting in Singapore and all over the world, and I recently came back. So it's really nice to see that the startup scene, which 10 years ago was very, very dead or just beginning nascent, is so buzzy right now. My company is called Kadagudu, and it allows women all over the world to buy like handmade shoes that are fit for your dimensions only. So it's pretty online, and then we get the shoes made here in Seongsu-do, and then we export it overseas. We're very early stage. I only started the company in April, so looking forward to speaking more about this.
Thank you. That sounds interesting. I'll have a lot of interesting questions coming up as well. But before that, Yanis, could you also tell us a bit more about yourself and your company?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So my name is Yanis. I'm CEO and co-founder of a company called Miraxess. I'm from France. I'm 28 years old. And so our company was created with one ambition, which is to bring mobile convergence on the markets. And based on that, we created a first product called Mirabook, which transforms the smartphone into a laptop. The idea, I had it in 2011, but I created the company in 2015. And today we bring a strong value added in B2B with our solution combined with Samsung DeX. In B2B, so for enterprises or any organizations, we can lower the total cost of ownership to simplify the IT budget by 70%. Because the Mirabook is a passive laptop, there's no CPU, no RAM, no hard disk drive. See the smartphone as the central unit and the Mirabook as a passive terminal. And in that way, we simplify the job of the IT department, who can more focus now on the security of one device, on the management, and yeah. So we already sell on the market and deploy to, for example, UK police forces, but very soon to Dutch police forces in Europe. We are present also in Japan, where we have 3,000 sales already, and looking forward to work on the homeland of Samsung, where they have 60% of market share, and hopefully with a success.
Thank you. Very interesting. So we have Mirabook, which is something that can help transform a phone into a laptop, and Kadakudu that can help find personalized shoes for women. Very interesting. But to dive a bit more, Somang, can you tell us why did you decide to start a company specifically? Like, what was the turning point for you?
Yeah, so I guess in my last role, I was actually helping ad tech companies sort of set up in Southeast Asia, and working with the very real needs of like the smallholder farmers that are living on like $2-3 a day and like not really integrated into the global supply chain. And that's when I realized that I am fundamentally better suited to like the startup world. I like to iterate quickly. I like to solve problems in a very practical way rather than dealing with the endless bureaucracy of like working in a big company, or especially what I was doing was working for like a multilateral organization like the World Economic Forum, and things just move so slowly. And like when I kind of got like back into like really helping startups, I was like, okay, I think that's what I want to do and what I'm better suited to do. And with this particular problem, it was a personal pet peeve of mine that despite all the money that I've spent on shoes, despite like my shoe closet full of shoes, like I only ever defaulted to like 1 or 2 pairs of shoes. And then when they went bad, like I couldn't replace them. So that was why I came on this idea specifically. And I can talk more about this because I'm sure a lot of people have questions about how do you decide which idea is the idea you really go for, right? I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. Yes, partially. We can move on that a bit later on in our conversation. I see. And Yanis, I was wondering, you mentioned Samsung earlier. Does that affect the reason why you decided to operate in Korea? Like, what was the reason you decided to do your business in Korea specifically?
So I came in Korea because I had the chance to be selected by Ministry of Startup and SME to participate to the K-Startup program here. So it's a great chance. I'm here for 3 months. So I'm just lucky to be here and to have this opportunity to try to launch my product here. And so I already had a lot of touch with Samsung people all around the world. I'm already working with the sales team, but now I can expand my my connections with the headquarters here and push for an official partnership, global partnership.
I see. Thank you. That's interesting. Well, now we know a little bit about your companies. And next topic I had in mind that I wanted to discuss with you is more about daily challenges of operating the business. So you are entrepreneurs here in Korea, and doing business for a while. I want to start the challenges part by addressing the elephant in the room, the coronavirus. So I was wondering if it kind of affected your business, and did you have to make some adjustments? How do you plan to tackle it in the future as well? So maybe start with Soman.
Okay, well, I guess my business is a COVID business. I mean, it's a COVID baby. It was born in the time of COVID. And I kind of always thought that Korea would be a good place to manufacture. It's just that, a lot of my previous like investors and like people I was talking to were like, oh no, if you're looking at the US market, you have to manufacture in Italy or Spain or whatever, right? And so I was in Europe during the great lockdown of like the spring of this year when like all the national borders were shut and like I had to stay at home. And at that point, I decided, like, with so much uncertainty going on, like everything from like getting visas and like, like legal documents of a company was just getting too complex. And obviously, the European borders were shut to each other as well, right? So I thought it's better to stick to what I know. And that really provided the impetus for me to like move our company and like decide to manufacture in Korea under a Korean brand. So that was pretty good. And I think just generally because we are an e-commerce company, like COVID is actually a boon for us, moving, it's pushing the entire retail sector into going more digital and more online. So that's kind of like aligned with what we're doing anyway. So it was, I think basically COVID has been only good for us. Sad to say.
I see. Well, quite a statement at the end there. Thank you. What about you, Yanis? How did it affect your company?
Um, So both effects, bad and good. First, the bad effect is that Chinese factory were closed, so it was really hard to have our production on time, and we had a lot of delays. However, on the other side, because we have now a tremendous demand on remote working, it's just great because our solution is the thinner client possible and the perfect remote working solution. So a company only needs to provide Eurobook to their employees, and they can work if they have Samsung phones. But because we work with Samsung sales team, it's very easy. We only have to target their customers. And I would say that it was also an opportunity for the different IT departments to reconsider and to rethink the way they work. And I guess because of the global incoming global crisis, the budget will be cut in most of major companies, and we can take advantage of that because we are a cheaper solution, and we create savings, I guess.
I see, very interesting. So despite the global pandemic, both of you guys have some advantages and small disadvantages as well in case of Yanis and his company. If we kind of move on a bit in the challenges part, you both have a lot of international experience and you kind of lived abroad. So I was wondering, for example, Somang, right? Doing a business here in Korea, and if you would say we compare it with Singapore, are there some cultural differences in doing a business or just living in general that affect your company, or you can kind of tell us a bit about?
I think in many ways, like in Korea, it's both easier and harder. So, you know, the harder part is like, because Singapore is very famously a business-friendly country with like, you know, very quick turnaround on things like business licenses. You can incorporate with $1. The language is English. The majority of the people who are starting businesses there are foreigners, so less barriers to entry on some parts, but it's also kind of a smaller market, and it's used more as a springboard market into like Southeast Asia, right? Like, you know, to do business in like Indonesia or Myanmar or mainland China, for example. So I think Korea is more of it's a harder market because it's so, like, it has both the features of Japan and China of being very insular, right? Like Google's not the main search engine here, right? WhatsApp is not the main ecosystem here. So it's got its own ecosystem, but at the same time, the domestic market isn't quite big enough like as China or like Japan to be juicy enough to be worth it for many companies. So I think there's an insularity. You know, you look at the Korean unicorns, they're all very insular, right? Like Coupang, Katalk, KakaoTalk, or whatever. And, you know, I think that's kind of like a barrier and like to the mentality. But the good part is that the Korean government is trying to change. Both Yanis and I are part of a Korean government like sponsored program to like try to open up the system and bring more people in. It's just that it's a little bit like, it's the growing pain stage, I would say. So, you know, there's definitely advantages here that you can take care of, like that you can take advantage of. So keep your eye out for like, you know, that. And there's like the system is flush with government money. So obviously that's a pretty integral part of the system compared to other countries where most of the early stage funding is private sector driven. So I think, I'm sure you, Albert, and Martina know a lot about this, but that's kind of a quirk of the system here.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I heard that Singapore is kind of gate to Southeast Asian market, and it's nice to know that you can kind of start there. It's internationally friendly. And I also agree that here Korea has a lot of advantages for startups in terms of government programs and government support. That's correct. Interesting point. And for Yanis, well, if we compare with the France, kind of same question. Would you say there are a lot of big cultural differences in doing business?
Yeah, very interesting question. So in France, the North Asian countries, we call them dragons. And I would say that Korea is the mother of dragons because it's such a specific market, difficult to approach, and the Korean culture is so I mean, different from China or Japan. Here, it's I think the first thing that shocked me is that people speak English, but they just don't want to speak English, and so you have to unlock them, try to find a way, and approach them in a different manner. Maybe here we have interns, so maybe use Korean interns, but it's always hard to get in touch and find customers or partners. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that I would say here is also a land of new technology, of innovation. So as a foreigner, I thought that it would be easy to just submit your innovation and it's fine. But I'm more and more surprised that some innovations like the VDI virtual desktop infrastructure are not a thing in Korea when they are in other countries like in Europe or in the US. And like the VDI, I was really shocked. So basically, VDI is a PC in the cloud. And here we have the best internet in the world. We have the 5G. And nobody has that. No companies is using that. No individuals for cloud gaming. It's not a thing. And I'm still trying to understand why it doesn't work here. And what's the replacement technology? So yeah, it's kind of paradoxical because a lot of technologies, but some of them are not fitted to Korean market.
I see. Thank you. I think one of the reasons is because for all the new technologies, it takes a lot of time for people to get used to them. And we start with early adopters, but it takes time, right? Hopefully in the future it gets better. And yeah, the Korea is one of the places with best internet in the world. So it can be a good test bed for startups that try to do connected business. By the way, I also wanted to ask a bit more kind of specific questions to you guys. So first one is for Somang. So you're in kind of fashion industry, right? Here in Korea, what I noticed, I'm not a big expert, but what I noticed is it's either really big brands or a lot of small independent brands that are located in trendy areas and they have like supportive customers. So where do you kind of fit in this scale? Like where do you think you will go with your company?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, I would say that we're looking at global markets really rather than the Korean market. I mean, we want to do well here. It's the home market, right? But we're much like Samsung, right? Like, yeah, we want to dominate the local market like Samsung does versus Apple or like Xiaomi or whatever. But it's good to have a home base. But obviously, the global market is much bigger. So, on that front. Also, we do think that in terms of fashion, like, there will be a lot more move away from mass brands because people are really all about customization these days, whether it's customizing, the exact like color and like print of the t-shirt that you want to wear or like customizing to your exact size. So we do think that there will be a shift away from this fast fashion, mainly because people are concerned about the sustainability of like these kind of like, I don't want to mention specific high street stores, but the wear once and throw away, like the environmental pollution that is causing. So I do feel like people are moving to a more value-based kind of thing. And people like our generation and the generation below us really care about brands like, let's say, Allbirds, the sneakers company, right? That like really cares about environmental sustainability and has a strong brand story on all sectors of like personal apparel, because that's the one kind of area, much like traveling, where people can and do try to make more conscious choices. So we're quite happy with this move away. And so we kind of don't mind being a direct to consumer online only brand. We don't necessarily want to open like, physical outlets in places like Hyundai department store or like, Neiman Marcus in the US. We want to keep it lean, mean, and like really stick core to our brand story and to our brand values. And one other thing I would say is that we want to leverage the K-beauty kind of appeal and the premium that, like that Korean like beauty products and hopefully fashion as well have like first in Asia and then increasingly in the US as well. and really like stick true to our Korean identity, right? And then really like be the first premium sort of like Korean luxury brand in any sort of category overseas when it comes to fashion.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. It's interesting points. I also had a bit more specific question for Yanis as well. So you are in a more of a hardware startup, right? With the actual device.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
sometimes in that market, the amount of users you have is very critical for the success. So I was wondering, like, what do you do to get new users? What do you do? What are your kind of strategy for acquiring new customers as well?
Mm. So because we are now working specifically on B2B, if we don't increase drastically our user base, it's fine, because we play on the long term. Our vision is that the smartphone will become our primary PC in few years, and so we try to sneak into many organizations, and then maybe in few months next year we will launch in B2C. And then growing our user base will be more important than it is now. And the way we do now, when we want to launch in a country, we just generally we just receive a call from Samsung sales team who says, okay, we have customers for you. So then I just ask, what's your distribution channel? They make introduction. We build the distribution channels, and then we just work with the customer. So it's quite easy. We never did proper prospection. It was always brought by Samsung or directly the company contacting us. We did a crowdfunding campaign a few years ago. Now we are about to deliver them. It's been very long to develop the product and to find ways to get the fund enough fund to produce the product, and now we are about to do it, and that's one of the reasons we don't want to go to B2C now, because we still have these backers to deliver, and once it's done, then I would consider that we will be ready for B2C. And what else to say? B2C requires a lot of marketing efforts, a lot of funds, and that's why I don't want to do it now. I want to do it after fundraising, and now we are looking for investors to go to the next step.
I see, thank you. Yeah, I think connections and introduction to the connections to your own business development is very important, especially here in kind of Asian countries. So this kind of leads me on to future. So you mentioned, Yanis, in the future you plan to do more B2B, right? B2C, I'm sorry, yeah. But
Yeah.
what about somang? What kind of plans do you have for your company in the future? You're more at the earlier stage, so the plans you have now kind of are more important.
Yeah, so actually we do want our first like primary short-term objective is to become a leading D2C brand, right? In this new space of like super customized, and also we have that foot measurement software, so anyone all over the world can just take 2 photos of their feet and we'll send them, you know, the shoes that are catered to them, right? Even if your right size or your left size are different, and build that premium brand. But eventually we have a lot of data on our customers, both individually and also at the aggregate level, both on their fit and their sizing, but also like on their consumer preferences. So we do want to become a B2B solutions provider eventually, you know, maybe help other footwear brands like institute more leaner, smarter manufacturing that can like predict, you know, demand and, you know, like seasonal trends and things like that, and also understand like women's feet better. Because I don't know, as I mentioned, the starting point for me was a very personal problem of like, why do women's shoes, especially heels, hurt so bad? And so, you know, kind of try to understand like all those different aspects as a B2B business, because I do see that like mass customization, we're just like slightly ahead of the curve, but like eventually like all the others, like, you know, the Aldos of the world will catch up with us and will like eventually want to like retool their manufacturing to be both more sustainable and also more customized and also leaner, like, and smarter and more data driven.
Got it. So for also, Soma, another thing I wanted to ask. During the promotions, I noticed you kind of rebranded and you changed the name of your company. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so previously, I mean, I told you we got started in April, so I just kind of came up with a name without doing that much research into it. I thought it was called Well Healed, which I thought was kind of snappy and at least like it was very clear what the product was about, right? But then I realized that like I wanted to lean more into our Korean identity and, you know, and then keep it kind of very noticeably Korean, you know. So our logo motif and everything is like drawing on like old, like ancient and also modern Korean elements. Kada means to go in Korean. It's the verb, the normative version of the verb. And kudu is the Korean word for like formal shoes or dress shoes, like heels and things. So yeah, I thought it was kind of a fun name. It's fun to say even to a non-Korean speaker, like Kadakudu, right? It kind of sounds like Matahari or Harajuku, like it rolls off the tongue. So that's what we kind of did. And I think it's a more consumer facing, like fun, more fun and also more premium brand.
I see. Before we move to the questions we got from the audience who registered for the event, I kind of wanted to kind of ask if you guys have any closing remarks, if you have any advice for people in the audience who are in the startup right now or thinking about launching this year. Anything you guys would like to share? Maybe starting with Yanis.
Yeah, so I have advices, but more specifically on hardware startups because that's the world I know.
First,
I
yeah.
would say that don't believe everybody, because when you have a hardware project, you have a lot of design houses or engineering bureaus that want to work with you, but without the proper expertise. They will try to work on your project, but instead they will learn from your project. So I would say try to find the right design house to help you, to follow you up on this project, but with the proper expertise on your product and your technologies. So then there's the Chinese experience for me, which was very good, but also very bad. When you go to China, I would say try to find someone trustworthy who already have the right connections there, because otherwise you will end up with very bad suppliers and very bad connections. And then I would say to launch in a new country like I do, try to first understand the culture, try to make friends in the country. That's very important. We always think about business, but making friends is very important. It's for me, it's the first step when you go to a country for business or for personal stuff. You have to make friends. And I have to say here in Korea, I'm kind of struggling, but in other countries was easier. And then once you have friends, you're able to better to have a first step in the country and make business properly. So that would be my advices.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it's important to have reliable people, whether it is for doing business together or just friends. It's always great. And Somang, also, you have anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, like, you know, it's never a great or perfect time to start a business, right? You're never fully ready. And Obviously, COVID has made that a lot more complex because the world and the supply chains right now is very unpredictable and in flux. But I would say, stick to your guns and like you can ask 100 different people and they'll give you 100 different advice, like pieces of advice, right? Like one way or the other. But like ultimately, like yourself better, your motivations better. So be true to yourself. If you're in a sector that is completely like, ravaged by COVID, so for example, the travel or hospitality kind of industry, then maybe now is a good time to start. Don't like, if you haven't quit your job yet, don't like quit right away. Like, obviously try to think about like revenue streams that you can do if this situation continues for like another year or two, international borders shut and all that. There's always things you can do like monetize content or turn things virtual that aren't currently virtual. But maybe instead of like quitting your job and like diving right into it, maybe just going to a pre-acceleration program, which is what I did, right? I went to a pre-seed incubator. They did not pay me to say anything. So if you want to know which one, well, okay, I went to one called the Founders Institute. But like, they'll take anyone. It's like the community college of I went without a team and without an idea as well. But it really it had to happen online because of what happened with COVID in Europe and stuff. Um, but it really helped me in those 4 or 5 weeks of like being stuck at home and unable to leave except for grocery shopping to like really clarify my ideas, right? So there's always things you can do even part-time, even if you have a main like job. So, try to take advantage of the fact that everything has gone virtual now. So you can actually take advantage of the fact that you're in a different time zone and maybe hop onto like an accelerator that's happening in the US or whatever, or Europe or whatever after your like working hours. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a lot of people, they try to delay and wait for that perfect moment to start their company, but there isn't one, and have to start at some point. But at the same time, have to be smart about it. Like you said, we don't have to just quit our job on day one and all in. I mean, some people do that, but it's very risky, so have to be careful with that as well. This is kind of general part of the conversation that I had that I wanted to have. Thank you very much. And during the event registration phase, people who attend, they asked a lot of questions for you guys, and we received so many questions, and we kind of narrowed down to a couple interesting questions we would like to ask you now. The first one is a little bit connected to what Yanis said earlier about having reliable people and partners and friends. So the question is, how did you find your core team members? Like how long it took you to build this kind of core team that you guys are working on? So yeah, Yanis, you can go ahead with that.
It took me 3 years to find the right team. Yeah, it's very long to find the proper people to work with, because it's like when you create your company, you do a lot of mistakes. You don't know where to find. You don't know what to find. So it's just a human adventure, but in the end, I would say that's something very valuable that major companies don't have, and that's something you can reply to investors who says, yeah, but your product, I mean, Samsung can do it, or whatever company can just copy it and do it, but they don't have the right team to do it. It took me 3 years to do so, and it will take maybe not 3 years, but maybe 1-2 years to find the right people to make such a product. And it costs money for them, so it's quicker to just go and work with you.
Yeah, that is very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. What about you, Somang?
Oh, for me, it was a lot faster. So around February this year, I tried everything to find, a good co-founder and like a tech person, because I'm more of a biz dev kind of person and strategy person. So I tried everything. I tried Shaper, it's like this French app, like it's like Tinder for co-founders. It's a paid app. I tried everything. I stalked people on LinkedIn, like using their LinkedIn profiles. But I think eventually the place where I found my first co-founder who we've gone our separate ways now, but mainly because we have separate product visions and we're still very good friends, is actually through Y Combinator's startup school, which is you know, that free online program. I'm sure most of you have heard of it if you're in the startup world. I literally I signed up for Y Combinator startup school and like looked through the directory of like everyone, right? Everyone who had signed up, like thousands of people, right? And I like sort of, you know, quickly glanced through them and found somebody who had like similar interests, similar skills, and similar kind of vision. Like they wanted to make customized shoes, right? And you know, and that's how I found her. The second co-founder, who's actually in KSGC with me, is actually somebody that I knew from my past, who like because of COVID they were working remotely in Los Angeles, kind of miserable, and like also wanted to do something new, right? So you know, I didn't tell her like quit everything and like just jump on this, right? She still like works part-time for her company, like remotely, because even if she was in LA, she would be working on Zoom anyway, right? So I was like, hey, if I get into this program in Korea, like it'll sponsor your visa and like, you know, I can pay you like, you know, bits and pieces, right? And if it works out, I'll give you shares. So she was happy to move and you know, all that. So I think you just have to, when it comes to building your core team, you have to be relentless and try all avenues. The one kind of dating app like Tinder for co-founders that I've been hearing great reviews about, just so that I save you guys all the trouble of all the dud ones that I paid for, is called Lunch Club, which I think like my ex co-founder was just like raving about it to me yesterday. Lunch Club is apparently really good. So try to get in on that. Seoul startups is probably a good place. You can always ask Al or Martina to like kind of like say, hey, who's doing this or who's good at this, who's available? Because it's always like it's even harder. People say like finding your co-founder or your perfect core team is like trying to find a life partner or a spouse, but it's way harder because because you don't know who's available at any point in time, right? Like, you know, like somebody might have the right profile, but then they have their dream job or they have a mortgage, so they can't leave their company job at the time. You know, it's like all a matter of timing as well. So, you know, fire all cylinders, you know, ask people, ask the smartest people, you know, ask the people you trust the most to introduce you, kind of like what we do in the dating world in Korea, sogeting, right? Ask them for sogeting, like go on LinkedIn, go on Y Combinator, go on Lunch Club, go on Soul Startups, like just be relentless and you'll find someone. Also just like think back to your past of like all the smart people you've worked in your life, you know, and check back with them and see how they're doing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe I can also share the way I found my my associate, my co-founder. So we have an event in my city in France called SIDO, which is like IoT event. And so I was looking for an associate for 4 months maybe, and couldn't find one because I really needed an engineer, and maybe 2% of engineers, they create their companies. So I went to this event and I just encountered a former guy who was in my high school. So I say hi, we discuss, and I told him, yeah, so I'm trying to launch a company, but I need an engineer as an associate. And he said, well, maybe you can ask Paul. I said, Paul? He said, yeah, so he's over here. He's looking for a job in this event. Okay, so I went to him, I presented the project, and he said, okay, let's do it. Let's meet on Wednesday. So he's like 2 or 3 years older than me. So we were not friends at high school, but now we became friends, and he's a very good associate. So a bit of luck, but you know, you create luck and opportunities by just staying active.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, both of you guys mentioned great points. Y Combinator Startup Program is great. And then LinkedIn as well. Just check your own network, check your own Slack, go to different events. You have to be active, and then you can find your own luck, so to say. Another question we got was for the international startups who are interested in specifically starting in Korea this year, what will be the key concerns, like what they should kind of really think about? And so who wants to be the first one to answer? Go ahead, Yanis.
I think he was mentioning gesturing towards me, throwing me under the
Yeah.
bus.
Right.
Please go
Good luck.
on, Mike.
Let's go.
Okay. So I think if you're an international startup starting in Korea, okay, just to clarify, international startup that has already got business elsewhere that wants to expand into Korea, or like an international person in Korea who wants to start from scratch right now in Korea.
I think it was about the second one, but we also have a question about first. If you can answer both.
Okay. Well, I'll let Yanis answer the first one because I can't really speak well to the first one. For the second one, look, it doesn't matter where you are. The internet makes, like connecting to consumers anywhere easy. If you want to do a very specific Korean one, just obviously Korea is more functioning and more normal than other societies in the midst of COVID. Obviously, if your like startup was to do like big events and like music festivals, that's not going to happen this year, right? Korea or anywhere else. But it's about finding a good product market fit, testing it. If you don't know Korea very well, like you don't speak the language or you don't understand the market very well, then obviously getting a co-founder, or at least like an employee or a partner who can open that for you is pretty critical, because like unless you want to like be like Shuttle and just cater to the expat community, which there's plenty of market. I mean, it's kind of there is a market there as well, a niche market, like a small slice of the market, but it's possible. But otherwise, I think start with what you know. Find somebody who knows the things that you don't, and that's just a good rule of thumb for a co-founder or employees in general. But like just really test the product market fit. I think that would be my advice.
Thank you. And Yanis, in case of moving the company from another country to Korea, what advice would you give?
I would say it's all about connections and understanding the culture. For me, because connections and having introductions here in Korea is everything. This way, you can just grow your business, find distributors, find partners, find suppliers, and you should not hesitate to ask for introductions. I think it's like 80% of it.
Got it. Thank you. Another question was about the recruiting. So what do you guys think, and girls, would be the nice way to recruit in a startup, as a startup? It can be a bit connected to a co-founder way, but maybe there's something unique to it as well. Who wants to go first for this one? Okay, maybe Somang, you can go first.
Finding a core team here in Korea?
Not core team. Well, recruiting people in general.
Okay. Well, I can only tell you my experience. I've sort of actually been really lucky because I got into this government program, like separate government program that is called GDI, Global Design Internship. And it's like a Korean government program for like designers who are like in university or like just graduated university, and it pays their salaries and also gives them like a lot of professional support. So I actually signed up for that program. And I think this is why like I kept emphasizing that there is a Korean website called K Startup Portal or something, where there's like a lot of different like government support programs that come up. So like do keep an eye out for that. And so I managed to get like 2 designers, one UI designer and another graphic designer, who are both eminently qualified, because they were pre-selected by the government panel as being like people who are hardworking and like technically skilled, and they were sort of seconded to me. So I'm pretty lucky on that front. On the tech development front, I wanted to take my tech prototype and make it more usable. I actually just ended up asking people for about different development shops in Korea, and I found this one called W Coding, which runs their own coding school here as well, but they also have a tech dev shop. So I met with the founders numerous times, and we talked through concepts, and then that's how I kind of, I'm still outsourcing a little bit of like things outside of my core team, because like being so early stage, I can't afford to like hire like and bloat my team to like 5 or 10, you know, full-time employees. So that's kind of my experience. Generally, I would say that if you're looking for a Korean who speaks good English and has like international market exposure, I would say LinkedIn is a good place to find them because they would have a LinkedIn profile. If you're looking for like a super, super local person who may not speak English, they may not have a LinkedIn profile. So there's kind of two websites that everyone talks about that are very good for hiring in the startup world, Wanted and Rocket Punch. And obviously you can reach out to university departments like KAIST for IT kind of people, tech people, just like the university career departments, and be like, can you just post this on your board, right? Because right now is a bad time for jobs as well. So people coming out of university are like looking for jobs desperately, and they're not going to find them at like government organizations or Samsung. So it's a good time to reach out to like universities. Like you can ask me, because I'm a Korean, like about which universities for which major, but like for design, it would be like Kookmin University. For tech, obviously KAIST, and you know, engineering, obviously like so SNU, Yonsei, like whatever. So just like ask me if you have a specific. Yeah, and Hongik is, yeah, Martina has just written on the chat, right? Hongik is very good for fashion design and arts and fine arts as well. So yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. Universities and Rocket Punch and Wanted. Some of my friends, they got hired to start up through Rocket Punch. So yeah, that one really worked. Yanis, would you like to add something?
Well, I agree with what she said, and also to answer on another aspect, more about what to look for in a profile. So I would say that in a startup with less than 10 people, you can maybe even 15, 20, you can be picky, very picky and selective on what you're looking for and take your time. For example, it's been maybe 4 months. I'm looking for a CEO assistant speaking Japanese because I really need someone to help me on the Japanese market, but I really want someone polyvalent at the same time, multi-skilled. I take my time, but after that, it will be more like you have a grid of requirements, and you just have a lot of applications, and you don't necessarily do one by one. You know what I mean? So yeah, take your time for the first hiring, and then when you will be big enough, it will be less important.
Got it. Thank you. This is kind of most of the questions we had. I think now is a great time to open the questions for audience. So if you guys and girls have any questions, now is a great time. And I already see some questions were asked and answered by chat. If you guys have any follow-up, feel free to ask more. And if you have any separate questions, we have two amazing people here ready to answer your question. Yes.
Well, so I see someone was answering some of the questions we got on Q&A, and thank you so much. But I thought we'd also give a shout out to everyone because I don't think they necessarily saw all your answers. So there were a few questions, or well, one very upbuilt question about pre-validating Korean market before actually going there. So I guess that's a very relevant question currently in the COVID times. And you mentioned it and talked about it. Obviously now in the days of internet, everything is a click away. But is there any other advice you have for entrepreneurs, for startups that are maybe considering Korean market, but cannot go there in person, cannot actually reach out, don't know the language? Is there other ways that they can make sure that this is the market that will make sense for their business?
I think customer development, and this is like coming back to a previous point. Oh, sorry. Should I speak?
Go ahead.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I think this is also answering a question that Cho Gyu Min was asking on the Q&A as well. I think, you know, customer development is incredibly important. You know, I spent the first month of my business in March just interviewing people, right? Just like I did my market research. You know, I went on like different Facebook groups, different forums on Korea, like neighbor cafes, right? Where like, you know, like-minded people who are interested in a specific topic were complaining about it. I wrote to all of them, right? And then I was like, hey, I know like shoes suck, and I know you're having trouble finding shoes that fit you and are comfortable. Like I would like to talk to you, you know, and so a lot of them like started talking to me, and then I asked each of them to refer me to like 5 of their friends who had the same problem, right? Or whoever of their friends, you know. And so it just went from like, you know, random people to more random people, and I did like a lot of in-depth interviews. So I would say like, you know, for a you know, even if it's a B2B product, you still need to like talk to your potential customers. And I use the mom test method. It's a very famous book, very short. It's essential reading for startups. So like, instead of telling them like, this is what I'm going to do, what do you think, right? You know, to your friends who obviously like care about you. And so they're going to be like, that's a great idea. I think the world really needs it, right? You know, just don't tell them exactly what you're building, and just ask them about practical things that they've done, like fact-based things, like when was the last time you bought shoes? Did you like them? How many times did you wear them, right? Those shoes. What were your biggest pet peeves about them? Why did you buy them? How much were they? Where did you buy them from? How did you find out about this brand, right? Like those kind of questions. And you know, I just like wrote them all up, and then I came up with like, you know, 3 or 4 main points that like everybody, like a large plurality of people kept bringing up over and over again, and then teased out the exact customer personas, so I was able to micro target them. And this is pretty important. And I would say like in Korea, if you're based overseas, you can still do that, right? You can still find people online, right? There's Facebook forums. If you don't know about them, find out about neighbor cafes, right? And this is why you probably need a Korean speaker, like partner. And I wrote a little bit about this as well. You probably need to either hire a Korean intern or like pay somebody who is like an ecosystem facilitator here, like, you know, or you can like go the public route. And like there are people in the government as well who are trying to help foreigners who want to send businesses like up in Korea. So like Albert's one of them, right? So, you know, you can talk to them and they can point you towards the right direction of like a potential person to help you. So you can do a lot of customer development online, remotely based in a different part of the world. But you just need to be able to have like somebody who can localize your product and questions. And obviously there's a language barrier as well. And also help you interpret things, right? Like interpret what you're getting back, because you might misinterpret what's getting back if you don't have the cultural context of the fact that, you know, if you relied on Google searches alone in Korea, like it would give you a distorted view, because most people in Korea use Naver, right? And the only people who are Googling stuff in Korea and using Google as their primary search engine are like expats or like Koreans who hate Naver for whatever reason. So that's going to be a distorted view of the market. So you're going to have to need somebody, like you're going to have to find someone who can interpret that like market specificity for you.
Thank you. That was nice.
I agree with that. My approach is different. I'm more based on instinct and very simple numbers. So, for example, my partner did a crowdfunding campaign in Japan, where Samsung phones are like 5 or 6% market share, and they had around 500 pre-orders. So I'm just doing basic math that if we have 60% of market share here, the number will be necessarily higher than 500 pre-orders, and that's enough for me. That's enough for me to confirm that there is a potential here. So I'm trying every time to find very basic numbers, but also because I have a very simple product. If you have something very technical and like deep technology, I guess it's more complicated than that to find market studies and everything.
Awesome, thank you. There was one more question, and I know, again, Song, you kind of answered it about the manufacturing, current manufacturing market here in Korea, but I thought of that it's also an interesting question for Yanis, because you are also a hardware company. And that was about how do you find manufacturers who are equipped and enabled for mass customization in Korea? And is Korea an up and coming place for mass customization manufacturers? So I'll let you know. No, nothing to answer.
So the question is Korea a good place for customization, mass
Manufacturer, yeah,
customization?
yeah, mass
Manufacturing?
customization, but I would say like manufacturing in general.
I have no idea, sorry. I heard stories that few years ago, industries were there, manufacturing industries were there in Korea, but they are all moving out of Korea. So I guess there's a reason for that, but I'm not specifically aware of this. Sorry, maybe someone can have an
Yeah,
answer.
because somang, you're manufacturing your products in the haven of the footwear industry in Seoul, which also happens to be currently a social impact haven as well. Was there a specific reason why you went with that specific area and with those specific manufacturers, or was it just by chance and internet research?
Well, actually, like, yeah, I've always known about Seoul because I mean, I've lived in Seoul before as being famous for handmade shoes and all of that. But so, I mean, that was like my first kind of, like port of call, let's say, right at the back of my head. But actually, Busan's got a fantastic shoe manufacturing industry as well, much bigger at scale. But a lot of people in Busan aren't really interested in me because they have orders from like Nike and Allbirds that are like, oh, my minimum order quantity is 40,000 pairs of shoes, because otherwise, why would I, kind of try to juggle you and Nike and like Allbirds, right? Who are like big paying customers. So eventually I had to go to the smaller scale ones that were willing to take a chance with a startup. And how I found this, actually, this is a good tip for everyone, again, on leveraging Korean government. I actually went to the Seoul city government officer in charge of Seongsudong, right? The Seongsudong shoe cluster industry. And you can find this either at like the Korean Chamber of Commerce, or you can even just call the Korean government, like metro government officials, and just be like, hey, who's in charge of like Seongsudong's shoe manufacturing cluster, right? And like making sure it becomes globally competitive. And then they connected me to that person. And then I was like, hey, can you find me a couple of manufacturers that are not so old school that they're scared of technology and they don't want to talk to anyone who's like, younger than like 50, right? And like want to shake things up a bit. And then he's like, okay, what do you need? And I gave him the exact specs. And then he came back to me like 3 days later saying, okay, these are two people that are run by like second generation, like, the mother ran the shoe shop and now her like 28-year-old son has joined as CEO, and he kind of understands how to do like marketing on Kakao, and he's thought a little bit about social media and stuff. So he's definitely like a better match for you than like, some 60-year-old like Korean dude who's been doing the same thing for 45 years, right? And so I think, that's kind of good. So always, like, I would say in Korea, like leverage the ecosystem builders, whether they're the local Chamber of Commerce or like, like Yanis spent time with like French Tech or the French Embassy, like all of these places, like the Korean government, the Seoul Metro government, Albert, these are all people that are like paid to like, facilitate movement within the ecosystem, deal flow and stuff. So go to them if you have any doubt. And yeah. And you can always ask on the Seoul startup Slack group, right? Like if you have a specific question and somebody will throw up a good ecosystem builder at you.
With that message, I think it's time to wrap up. It's been an hour. I
think we have one more question. We just got a question.
I think we can keep that question. Let's leave ourselves. I would just like all of you to know that both Yanis and somang are both on Seoul Startups. So if you have any more questions, feel free to ping them, to reach out to them. They'll be more than happy to answer your questions. And like someone said, like the whole point of Seoul Startups is for you to ask questions and to talk with each other. reach out to people. We are all here for you, and we're here to support you. So I would like to thank both our panelists for joining us today, for taking time out of your day to come and talk to us, to share your experiences, your stories. I think it's been really productive for us. And I would also like to thank Albert, who actually organized the whole event, pretty much all on his own. So thank you, Albert, for everything. And hopefully we'll see you soon. And by soon, I mean hopefully next week. So stay tuned. Make sure to go to soulstartups.com and join us if you're not there. And this is it. So I'll see you
Thank you very
around.
much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.